This is Keaton Kruger from Iowa, and you're listening to the Vance Crowe Podcast.
AJ Reeves.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad you're here. I invited you on as kind of a wild card. And it's that all of the other guests that I've had so far have been established experts in some field. And it is clear when we're talking that they know something really, really, really deeply. And no offense, but you're too young, I think, to have most people at your age. I certainly, at your age, do not have a deep, deep expertise. But you have some characteristics about you that I think are remarkable. I think that are actually worthy of people taking note and being like, hey, wow, I could learn something from this guy, because I know that I have.
Right.
And so I wanted to bring you on and talk about what is it like to be a young man in his 20s living in a Midwestern city, and you're trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future. What kind of job should I get? What's going on with marriage? What's this thing all about? I want to talk about, like, what is your view? And the reason that I chose you is because we met at jiujitsu. You had gotten your ass in there before I had gotten mine in there. Like, you had said, hey, this is a skill I want to learn, and I'm willing to go through the abuse and the beatings to get it. And so you and I are both white belts. You are a 4-stripe white belt, and I am a 2-stripe white belt. And since going there, I can tell you that the thing that has helped me progress is that I see how the way you work on things gets you to progress faster. And I think there are a lot of things that people could learn from that. Yeah. And so let's just have a conversation about you and your life and whatever. And I'll even talk about what it was like when I was in my 20s. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. And I would like to say, too, that the kind words mean a lot coming from you, Vance.
Oh, man. So when you think about what brought you into the jiu-jitsu studio at first, what is that? Why did a guy like you decide, hey, I'm going to go start fighting and grappling and choking people to death and letting them choke me to death?
I think a little bit of fear and a little bit of being a fan of MMA. So I've been a fan of MMA for a long time. I like watching fights, the UFC, Bellator, Pride, Strikeforce. I just am a fan of that.
You knew about this stuff before you came to jiu-jitsu?
Yes.
I didn't even really know about it at all until after I came to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I've been a fan of MMA for a long time.
Okay.
And I think that's part of the reason I wanted to start training. Another reason is where I grew up, it's not the greatest neighborhood of all time. And I've had friends get jumped and I've had friends get beat up.
Really? Just by like random people that want to take their money?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you've been held up?
I have not. I think I've been scared before in like situations that could turn bad, but no, I haven't been in one.
And how old are you?
24. I'm going to be 25 on the 5th or the 9th. So
how are you deciding what to do with your life right now?
I'm just trying to pick up skills and I'm trying to find out what I want to do with the rest of my life, kind of. I think I'm exploring right now. I'm trying jiu-jitsu. I'm doing web development. Learning a lot about investments and how to use my money and make my money work for me. I'm just trying to learn as much as I can and figure out what my real interests are.
How do you even establish that list of the things that you want to, learn more about? I mean, because I would say those are a damn good list. You could probably make a principled list, and those would all be core principles for everybody to learn. How to defend yourself, how to manage your money. What should I be spending my time working towards?
So on the fly, I can't think of the title of the book, but there was a book I was reading, maybe I'll think of it later. And the author said that you should have 3 hobbies. And it's one that keeps you smart, which is web development for me. One that keeps you in shape, which is jiu-jitsu for me. And one that makes you money, which is just learning about investing and investing my money.
Oh, man. That is really good.
Yeah, so I tried to get 3 hobbies based around that.
Who introduced you to the idea that you could go be reading books and somebody would have already figured something out that you could learn from?
That's a good question. I think I got lucky in high school by having a good string of literature teachers that I kind of looked up to and were good to talk to. And they didn't force books down your throat. Like we read Catcher in the Rye and all that stuff in high school, like most high school kids do. But they had a really relaxed approach and just would talk to you and have conversations, and I kind of looked up to them. And I had one that was really into nonfiction and more philosophical books, which was also fun to talk to him about. I got into reading at a really young age. Actually, my mom loves to tell this story when she was just talking about me being a kid, is in preschool or kindergarten, one of the two, kids weren't really reading that much yet, and if they were, it was just like one word at a time, like this is apple.
Right. Sight words.
Yes. So in preschool or kindergarten, I can't remember, but after my first day, I came home crying, like just bawling my eyes out. And my mom's like, what's wrong? And I was like, the teacher said she wouldn't let us read. Like she wasn't going to teach us how to read yet. And I was mad. I wanted to learn how to read. That's why I'm like, if I'm going to go to school, I want to learn how to read.
Hell yeah. That is exactly what you want your kid to come home and be like, I thought I was going to learn at this level and we're not doing it.
Yeah. And so my mom actually told my teacher, just talking to her, like, he really wants to learn how to read. If you could kind of just squeeze that in if you can, right? And then come the end of the year, I was reading like little Dr. Seuss books or whatever to the class.
So I'm 100% with you, man. Like my childhood is filled with books.
Yeah.
So there's all the adventures that I went on, going to my first day of kindergarten and, going to a dude ranch with my family as our one big family vacation we ever took. And then I had these book adventures that I went on, like Louis L'Amour. Did you ever read those books?
I did not.
They're cowboy books. And then I never read Harry Potter, but I read like similar sets of things. And kids that go on these adventures learn about how the world works before the kids that are just sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Reading's very powerful.
What are you reading right now?
So right now I'm kind of in between books, and I'm thinking I'm just going to pick up on the book club you're doing here.
Nice.
Yeah. I have a couple books set aside that I do need to read, and I really procrastinating on that.
The All Quiet on the Western Front, you can get the book for like $5 if you want to hold it. I like to hold it. And the first chapter, just to give you an idea of what's going on, they're having like a great time. They're eating. They've come out of the trenches. Everybody's happy. And then partway through, they talk about a guy getting killed through the eye. And so you have this juxtaposition in this first chapter of like joy, happiness, people celebrating, and then, horrific immediate death right next to it. Yeah. And that they've just crawled out of the trenches in World War I, where they're trying to do that to other guys too.
Oh, wow.
So the book has already started off just like at full speed.
Just a punch in the face.
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. So I actually had the chance to read All Quiet on the Western Front in high school. We had to pick between two books, and I actually picked the other one.
What was the other one?
It's called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
I've never heard of this.
It actually ended up becoming my favorite book of all time. So
wow.
I'm glad that I read it. It's a very interesting perspective, and I think if you know anybody that has autism, you should read that book.
I certainly 100%. Do. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's written about this kid, and he's really into mysteries, like the Nancy Drew or the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, right? And he has autism, the main character, and you're seeing the book through his eyes. So the author's actually writing through the perspective of someone with autism. So you're not reading the book or seeing things in the real world as we would see it. You're seeing it as the kid with autism would see it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
That's like putting VR goggles on.
Yes.
And walking through that.
But there's something about the universe that this author painted that is very descriptive and very visual. Like you can see it when you read it.
Okay. So tell me the name one more time. What's the name?
The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
Okay. I will. You know what? So how do you have any idea when that book would have been written?
I actually do not.
So here is a challenge that I'm trying to overcome with the book club, which is I want the books to have stood a long enough test of time that you can say, hey, there's something culturally important for us to know about this book. Right. And so there's this concept called the Lindy effect, which Nassim Taleb talks about, like a book, as long as a book has been around, it is likely that it will be around for approximately that much time on the other side. The odds are, if you were going to choose of all the books that are out there, which one's going to last at least this long, that one's going to have a higher odds of doing it, right? Wow. Yeah. So there's a value in finding books that are further out because it means they've had deeper contextual, cultural meaning. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to go so far back that you lose the people that could be kind of following your way down there. So I want to have things that are in the era of To Kill a Mockingbird, but I don't want to read To Kill a Mockingbird again. Right. It was a good book, but I learned my lesson there. So I want to find out, like, what's that cutoff line? Because To Kill a Mockingbird's like the 1960s. Okay. And so, Is it that it has to be 60 years old? I don't know. What happens if there was a book in the 80s that was really important and shaped some part of culture? And so, like, when I think about the book you're talking about, if it's more recent, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I want it to be because it's teaching me like some deep, important meaning.
Right.
And that's what Dante's Inferno was for me.
Sure. And Dante's Inferno is pretty far back, right? When did that come out?
Yeah, 1400s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And did you read it?
I did not. I read the first 3 cantos and then did my thing and procrastinated on it. But
I mean, like, I understand that, because if I had not had the book club, I 100% would have done that, because that's where you're walking from, like, hey, I'm on a walk and I got lost and I was chased by these animals, to the gates of hell. And it says, all you who enter here, abandon all hope, because it's just black and abysmal from here. And if you don't get past that door, you don't actually know how deep that hole is. And it is definitely worth it, because he climbs down into the pits of hell, and his point of view is showing, like, this is the suffering that awaits you if you do something of a crime of this magnitude. I had somebody show up on my Facebook and be like, yeah, Dante was just trying to get even with all of his enemies, showing how they were in hell. And he's like, yeah, maybe that's one context. But what he's doing is he's saying, look, everybody, there are some rules that if you break those rules, your eternity is forever punishment.
Yeah.
That's deep. That's deep.
Sure. Sounds like I quit right before the good part, huh?
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, like, how often I do that in life if I quit something. I'm like, what if I just stopped right before it got good or something?
That is a wonderful question, because I think that the difference between my life and your life in my 20s, one of them, is that you've gone deeper on your explorations, on your hobbies, and I explored really wide.
Really?
So I was like going on this ship, but I only did it for 10 months, 11 months, and then I did this house, but I didn't do 2 or 3 or 4 where I'm like renovating it and figuring that out. I was like, I do that, but I don't really like it. So I'm not even getting out of the white belt where you're a beginner to a blue belt where you could defend yourself. I'm not quite getting to that level. I'm close, but not there. And I give up on all these things and move into different fields. Yeah. Whereas you have gone deep on jiu-jitsu, on drumming, now you're trying to do the one on coding.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, let me ask you something about that. So you're a kid, right? And you've gone on this ecotourism ship and you're out in the ocean. I mean, that's a little scary to some people, right? And you bought this house, you renovated it, you flipped it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a good investment, and that's kind of a big jump sometimes to some people. But then you talk about the Peace Corps and going all the way to Africa. To me, that's insane. That is...
You mean it frightens you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's just such a big... it could change your life so much.
Would you be worried about your safety, or would you be worried about like what you would do with your time, or would it be like leaving the rest of the world behind?
Probably leaving the rest of the world behind a little bit. And I think just how big of a decision that is to just pack up and leave. I kind of want to know what was going through your head when you were like, Peace Corps, I'm in.
I can tell you there's 2 major drivers. One, and both of them really fear-based. One was I had this sensation that everything that was important that was happening somewhere else, right? So I grew up in Eureka, Illinois. It's small town, 4,500 people. Great people. I love my hometown. Love Good. It. On Facebook, I see my friends succeeding, and I celebrate and excited about it, and I want to see their businesses going. Like, I loved my hometown. But I always thought that the town next to ours probably was doing something cooler.
Yeah.
And then the same thing, maybe at the university, that's going to be something cooler. And then, I want to go see other people. So I'm always motivated by this, like, there's something else going on and I'm not a part of it. So that was like, okay, I've got to go do this. And then the other thing was I was absolutely deathly terrified that I would not earn the respect of my father.
Wow. That's a big one to overcome. I want to hear about that.
So my dad traveled all over the world before other people did it. Like now people have semester at sea. They get a chance to get out and see things.
Yeah.
But my dad was born in 1942. And so before he had 7 kids, he had this life where he was, he joined the Peace Corps as well. He was in the 2nd class of the Peace Corps. He heard John F. Kennedy give the speech, and my dad was like, I'm signing up for that. And this was back when it was like more of like a military thing. So they used to have it where you like showed up in barracks in Puerto Rico and you trained and you had to do, running and medical stuff. You had to like really learn how to do this in a really hardcore way. And they were going to drop you in and help people. That's not at all. I was in a settled area. Yes, it was dirt floors for most people. They drew their water out of wells and stuff, but it was just different than what my dad was doing. Then my dad gets back to the U.S. He meets Pete Scottese, that guy I went out and met, and then I could go on and on about his story, but ultimately he has a Fulbright scholarship in Ecuador, so he now speaks fluent Spanish. Because he was already down in the Peace Corps in Peru. Then he does some sort of language program where he learns how to speak Portuguese. So he also speaks Portuguese and traveled and lived down in Brazil. Then he got some job that sent him to Japan, right at Japan as they were starting to become an industrialized major superpower, like late 70s. And then he came back after all that, met my mother, who was a school teacher, and had 7 children. And so he does not fight to be a part of politics in our hometown. He's a country stockbroker. He helps people make money off of the money that they're earning in other ways. And he was very, very successful. And he was completely a hermit. And he had tens of thousands, maybe more than 10,000 books all throughout my house. And he doesn't go out and go to parties and things doesn't drink, he's just country guy reading these books.
Wow.
And so as a kid, I'm growing up being like, I got to get out of here. Dad had this wild life, and then he came here like, why would he do that? I need to be out there where all the fun and exciting things are happening.
Right.
And I'm also deathly afraid as soon as I get out there that my dad's going to think that I'm wasting my time, because I wasn't going to Japan. Nobody was paying me to get to do a Fulbright in Ecuador. And so like, what can I possibly do to live up to what this guy already did?
Right.
And that's driven me most of my life, probably until I met my wife.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I think most people look up to their parents, and a lot of people do, right? And your dad doing all that, that's obviously something to look up to. So
yeah, and I think that the interesting part about it is there's a difference between looking up to someone and then being afraid of their disappointment.
Right. That too. Yeah.
Right. Like, because there's an equal, however much you look up to them, then that's how much the disappointment if you do something wrong would hurt you.
Right. Do you view this as a negative thing? You being scared of what your dad would think?
No. At the time, I did. I mean, at one point in time, I was at the point where one time I was telling my friend Court, I told this on the podcast one time, I think, and but I don't know how blunt I was about it. I was talking with my friend Court and telling him, I don't know what my dad, what I could grow up to be, right, that my dad would respect. And so he was like, well, you should call him and tell him that. And I was like, I would rather put a gun in my mouth than call my father and tell him that I don't know how to earn his respect. Sure. And my buddy Court was like, okay. And he sets the phone down and was like, then I think that means you should call him. And he leaves. Yeah. And that was a life-changing experience for me. And I think that everyone has to go through that. If you've ever found somebody that you really respect, but that respect is turned into some form of slavery to who they think you should be, or to who you think they think you should be, you got to get out of that. And my dad wasn't doing it to me. No. He wasn't doing anything wrong at all. I had put him on that pedestal.
Yeah, you just built this up in your head and just looped it till it got bigger.
He was just a man that decided that what he wanted was to live among his books and have his 7 kids and their grandkids. And he's just living a quiet life with my mother, and they're deeply, deeply happy.
Just small town.
But when you're a kid, you don't think of being quiet and fulfilled and, having kids around as being, the way to have succeeded. Yeah. You think, go out there, become important. You
want to be where the party's at too.
Right.
Yeah.
What is your aspiration?
My aspiration? That's that's a good question. I think I'm more of a person of building these short-term goals right now. I think right now I'm pretty short-sighted on what I want to be doing. I just, instead of thinking I want to be a doctor in 20 years, I'm kind of thinking like I want to get better at this now. And I think that's kind of my approach to it. I don't know if it's right or wrong or in between, but...
Well, I think that you could make the case that there is a cost with time that you have to consider, right? So
Sure.
You want to wait until you know what you want to do, but you don't want to wait so long that you've missed the starting gun.
True.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's probably the area of my life that I probably hurt the most in that I was spending time not really choosing something and using it like, okay, I don't know what to do. I'll do this next step. And I don't know that I definitely couldn't know where I ended up, but I wish I would have spent more time just stopping and thinking about what it is that I actually want in my life.
Yes.
You know, and imagining myself having tastes that change. Because when I was 22, I remember thinking like, only losers would quit partying and having fun at the bars like this.
Yeah.
And then later you get older and you're like, if you were 30 years old and you act like that, then you're dipshit.
You're lost. You're done. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm not saying you're a drunkard or anything like that. I'm just saying like,
I figured that.
You want to make sure that you shoot the gun. I don't have any criticisms on what you're doing. I'm just wondering, do you think you will be on a path? Are you anticipating like, 2020, I'm going to know what I'm going to be? Or are you thinking, no, I got a few more years to figure this out?
I would like to get it figured out sooner rather than later, but I also want to figure it out. Like I want to do it right and know what I want to do. Like I said, I'm kind of on this exploration of figuring out what I want to do. And I think I'm narrowing in on something, right? I'm actually getting really interested in stocks and investing and how money works. And I've been teaching myself that just for fun.
How are you learning that?
Just various sources online, whether it's through YouTubers or books.
And how do you know you're not getting the like essential oils treatment where or like the multi-level marketing, you should buy these shares in this.
Well, I guess hypothetically I don't.
Okay.
However, I haven't spent anything on any extra courses or so I think that's a good start.
And then do you have names of people that come to mind that have been interesting?
Yeah, one of them is Graham Stevens. He's a YouTuber. He's a little out there. I think some people might kind of find him abrasive, but he's a real estate investor and he's young, so I kind of level with him on that. Like it's just cool to hear someone that's around my age being super successful. But he also gives real practical advice. It's not big, lofty, crazy, unreachable. Like you see a lot of people kind of like, I think of the essential oils thing, like you said, right? I think there's a lot of good in like some of the cryptocurrency stuff that's out there, but there's a lot of fake salesmen online and people selling their courses and how to become a billionaire in 10 years and how to become a millionaire tomorrow.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, like I stay away from all that stuff. But you know what? That means that I do miss that there are people that can be explaining to you. I don't watch much on finances. So my dad was a stockbroker. My brother is a CPA level. I don't think he ever got a CPA, but he's an accountant, hardcore, runs a really sophisticated geothermal well drilling company. Yeah. But anyway, so I was kind of always around people that understood money. And if I had questions, I could ask them. But one of the benefits of watching a YouTube channel is sometimes they're going to tell you about things you didn't know to ask.
Yes.
And that's the important thing about getting out into the chaos and finding these people.
Correct. Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is just, when you're studying these things, finding people that are actually energetic. I think that's a big thing for me. I like people like these YouTubers are like kind of energetic and make me feel more excited. I don't think I could do it if the guy was super monotone and just sitting there telling me how things work.
So I've been reading Carl Jung, and he talks about you can't force yourself to be interested in things you're not interested in.
Yeah.
And he talks about how when you do become curious about something, you should really pay attention to that. And I thought, man, that is exactly right.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And if you could maybe send me something on where to find the Carl Jung pamphlet you're talking about, I would love to look into it.
Yeah, dude, I'll throw a link to it on this part of the podcast in the notes on the YouTube channel. But I don't have a full like picture of Carl Jung. I've just barely started.
Yeah, I don't know much
but
about
he
him.
talks a lot about archetypes, which are like the core fundamental heroes and the characteristics that a person could have deep down kind of at their core.
Okay.
And there's so much there that I don't know where to tell you to look. I think, but I'll share with the one that I have.
Okay.
I'm going to have my, I have a wild story. So Monsanto gave me an executive coach because they wanted me to go from being director of millennial engagement to do I want to do finance or supply chain, right? And they were like trying to get the executive coach to explore my options. They sat me down with this woman that was unbelievable. She was so good. I went there thinking it was going to be like a rah, rah, rah. You can do it there. No. This woman was able to ask me questions and listen to what I said to her about what I cared about and what I wanted and what I was passionate about. She came and watched me give a speech, and she knew deep, deep down my archetype, right? And what I'm trying to do. And I met with her a couple weeks ago, and she agreed after a really careful thought that she would come on the podcast. So I'm going to do that in a couple weeks. And she did a whole bunch of work in Jungian psychology. So I will definitely load up people and give you a chance to explore some Jung, because I think the conversation with her is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And so when you go to jiu-jitsu, are you excited about getting there, or are you dreading it?
Neither. I think whenever I first started, especially, I was really excited, nervous, like it's a new thing and I don't want to look dumb. I don't want to get beat up all the time. Right. But now it's kind of, I don't know if I have like some overwhelming emotion when I show up. I'm just there. I'm ready to go.
For me, when I get there now, I get excited the better that the person is that walks in the door.
Yeah.
And I remember for most of the time, I'm like, I hope somebody new comes in. I don't want to be the new guy anymore. But eventually you get to the point where you're like, yeah, I can roll with that guy and beat him. But what I really want is to roll with a guy that I can't beat, because then I get way better.
No, I agree. I think it reaches a limit though, right? Like, but then if your coach is going to be rolling that night, like, what can you do?
Right.
So
that's one of the things that you really can't understand just by looking and talking with coach, that men can train for 10 years, lift weights as heavy as they can, run every single day, and they could go up against coach and not.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. There are only a small number of people in the world that can roll with him and beat him. And
quite frankly, I want to see it. I want to see what it takes to beat coach.
Live and in person.
Yes, I want to see someone do it. I don't know why. I
think it's because you know how strong he actually is. Actually, maybe better put, we don't know, because he never goes.
Yeah.
Do you have this sensation when you're rolling with coach that you're like a little kid rolling around on his dad?
Yeah. Sometimes I try new things rolling against coach, things I've never tried before, because it doesn't matter what I do. Like, I could pull guard and do my game like what I normally do, but that's where whenever I roll with coach, I've been trying weird stuff just because.
But I think that one of the things that you get from that with coach is you see what essentially the paradise state would be, right?
Yes.
But you also see, like, we know what it took him to get there, and it makes you go like, I don't know that I'm willing to do that. Like, he was trying to get out of the hell that was the parts of Brazil that he was in where he's getting beat up. And so he got out of there and then climbed up a mountain. I want to go far in jiu-jitsu. I want it to be a passion. I want it to be my art, but I don't want to go that far.
No. Normal people can't go that far. People, like, I don't know, something has to happen to you to make you want to train as much as coach trained.
What does your drive come from?
For jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
I want to get better at it. I think that's where it is right now. I think I started maybe a little bit out of a place of fear, and I think that place of fear is kind of dissipated a little bit, but I think right now I just see people like Justin or, blue belts and up that are doing great, and I want to get that good.
How does being a guy that's been doing it for a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, year and a half.
How did it change the way that you walk around on the streets or go to a baseball game or go to work?
I don't know. I think it definitely helped. I think I know that I train hard, and I know that most people aren't. And I think there's maybe in my head, even though I don't have an ego. I don't want to have an ego. And jiu-jitsu definitely will kill your ego. But I definitely think I have maybe a little one-up sometimes.
Yeah, I think for me, you at first get that sensation of like, chances are you don't know what you're doing.
Correct.
But then you also have the humility that says, but you may look like you're just some big goofy oaf, but you may be real good at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Or some other striking art, or, like they're all over the place, and you can't tell just by looking at them.
Yes. You see some of these brown belts and black belts, and you wouldn't, if you saw them in street clothes, you wouldn't think otherwise. You wouldn't think that they were some super trained beast, but they are. I mean, sometimes you can't see it on everybody.
So you're a guy working not a 9-to-5 job. You can talk about, what are you doing right now for work?
So right now for work, I'm at Sam's Club. I work in the tire installation section of Sam's Club. I'm there 7 to 3 or 7 to 3:30 most of the time.
And what are you doing there?
So I'm making sales, like talking to people about what tires they should get for their car, and I'm installing the tires when they purchase them.
What do you think is the split between selling them the tires and putting the tires on?
What do you mean?
I mean, is it you spending half your time putting on tires and half your time?
I think I'm 80% putting on tires.
Okay. And do you enjoy that work?
Yeah, it's all right. It's not like what I want to do forever, but it's not bad. I think it's a decent job, especially for a younger person. Got me through college.
Why did you choose that one?
I originally just got a job at Sam's Club because I was working fast food and I hated it. And I just putting applications in everywhere. I'm 18. I'm just throwing applications into the fire. And Sam's Club called me and they said they needed a person, so I showed up.
So my dad had like an extreme aversion to men working at restaurants.
Really?
And it wasn't because he was like, I don't think they can do a good job, or like, you belong out in the sun. He was saying most men are not learning skills that they can compound with interest. Like, yeah, you're learning service skills, right?
Sure.
Like how to be nice to customers, but you're not learning how to build something. You're not learning how to fix something. You're not learning how to construct. And if you don't learn it when you're young, you won't learn it.
Yes.
And so he was like, absolutely no fast food restaurants for me working. That was not going to happen.
I think I balanced that out a little bit by studying a lot outside of work. Now I'm not learning these crazy life altering lessons when I'm there typically, but it's doing a job for me, which is paying for things. And that's kind of the job I needed to serve right now, but I'm looking for that next step.
And so what do you value with your money? Like right now, you've got a paycheck coming in.
Yeah.
If you overspend, there's nothing there, right?
Right, exactly.
So what do you do? What do you spend your money on?
So jiu-jitsu monthly. I like to try to eat.
Is that a painful thing to come out of your checking account, or are you sitting there watching it and being like, ugh?
Sometimes it depends. I've been a lot better about saving and having money put aside and making it to where that $100 a month doesn't matter, but
that's good.
So that's actually helped a lot. I've been less stressed since I've been learning how to invest and move money.
It's so funny because I remember when I was in my 20s, having a budget seemed insane to me.
Yeah.
I didn't ever have a credit card, so I never went in debt.
Okay.
But I knew how much my rent and stuff was, but I wasn't sitting down being like, and this is how much I can have for entertainment, and this is how much I can have for exercise, and it was all just a pile of money that I threw around. And really, I was buying a lot of cigarettes with it when I think about it. So bravo to you for staying out of that shit.
Yeah, right. So jiu-jitsu, mostly I have a gym membership. I try to eat healthy, have a couple supplements, things like that. But outside of...
What do you supplement with?
Just protein, creatine, and pre-workout. I don't go too crazy in it. I think some of it's a little snake oil, but some of it isn't.
Yeah, I eat a lot of whey protein.
Yeah, I do too.
A lot, and it's because I want to get the protein, and it's the way that my diet is set up, and particularly if I'm adhering close to my diet, and like I just can't eat enough chicken to make that happen. Right?
Yeah, it's convenient having 30 grams in one scoop like that.
Yeah,
So
and then you
convenient.
don't add a whole bunch of extra fat in there. You don't have a bunch of other calories. It's just like bang, and it tastes good.
Yeah. Do you just do water and powder?
No.
Oh.
And so I have an elaborate setup for my breakfast.
Okay.
Because I want my macros to be dialed in for as much of the day as I can, so that way when I have dinner, if I need to be flexible, I can be. So in the morning, I have a protein powder shake with 20 grams of oats, 140 grams of blueberries, and 15 grams of peanut butter. So I have my proteins, carbs, and fats that are in a perfect conglomeration.
Sure.
And then I put water in it and I blend it up. And the protein powder is the exact amount of protein I need, and it just goes straight into my app. So I hit that. I had my regular breakfast, and then I move throughout the day. So I try and have as much of my life as can be regimented. I have regimented.
Nice. Yeah, I would like to get into doing kind of a breakfast smoothie deal like that. I think I would enjoy that, and I'd benefit from it.
Frozen blueberries, man.
Frozen blueberries?
They're cheap. It's like $11 for a giant big bag of them. They taste great.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that they've got a lot of other nutrients in them. You know, you get a big bright berry. They're great. And that's actually my other trick for having snacks. I don't know if I don't know how much do you worry about how many calories you eat?
Loosely. I try not to. I don't eat fast food that much. I don't eat.
Do you know how many calories you eat in a day?
No, I don't track my macros that much. I think I could.
Have you ever?
No. I think I could benefit from it a little bit, but I also know that if I start following some strict crazy diet, I'll only stick to it for a couple weeks.
So there's a guy on YouTube that I found named Radu Antonio, and he's this Hungarian like bodybuilder, but he's not like crazy jacked or anything. He's just a guy. And I liked the way that he put on entertaining videos about if you want this physique, then you need to eat this way. And like the physiques he's shooting for is like Brad Pitt in Fight Club, right?
Yeah.
So you are watching a little bit of like, oh, I want to look like that. But then after all that stuff, and you can fast forward through, or you can listen because it's kind of like making a friend because he tells you about what he's interested in. Then he talks about like how macros really work and about, you know, how to space them out, how to calculate all these things. And once I learned how proteins, carbs, and fats related to calories, I dropped 50 pounds in like, it was probably under 12 months. It was probably 10 months.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And it was all from knowledge.
Really?
Yeah. And like now, if I want to lose weight and I'm not losing weight, it's because I'm just like indulging myself. I'm like, you know, eating candies or not tracking it. But as soon as I want to lose weight and I'm motivated to do it, I get on that thing and the train just rides down.
So what were you doing different with exercise in that time?
I did virtually no cardio. And when I was losing all that weight, I was starting to lift. And that's what really got me going on fitness. And in order to be able to lift, I was so stiff from having sat in an office chair and from being a big fatty that there was a lot that I couldn't do. So I had to do a ton of stretching. And that was really humbling because instead of lifting the bar on the bench press and moving it up, I'm sitting on the ground like stretching my arms and so I wish I would have done that faster and earlier and better.
So I'm not much of a New Year's resolutions guy. I just never have been. But one of mine for 2020 is I'm stretching a lot more. I want to do it to where I can maybe put aside 10 minutes in the morning and stretch and then meditate.
Is it hard for you to set aside 10 minutes?
No.
What time do you get up?
It depends. I usually get up around 4 or 5.
Wow.
And I always try to get workouts done early. It's just worked the best for me. I've also found if I need to get something done, that's when to do it.
Yeah, that's right. When you go to the gym and you're working out, what are you doing?
So I've been into Strong Lift 5x5.
Okay.
It's a program they just set aside. They have 5 different lifts. They have bench press, squats, deadlifts, bent over barbell rows, and then overhead press. And they have those 5 split up between 2 different days. You got A days and B days. So I think one of the days is overhead press, deadlift, and the rows. Then the other day is deadlift, squat, bench press. And you do 5 sets of 5. And then every week you add 5 pounds to what you're doing.
Wow. And you do that by yourself or you got a buddy that shows up?
I do it by myself.
Wow.
Yeah. Just pop in the headphones and start listening to music and get going.
That's interesting. You know, I quit listening to music and even podcasts when I go on my runs now because I figured out that I can actually, instead of hating the run and trying to distract myself, I can focus on the run and what I am observing, what I'm observing about myself, what I'm observing about my neighborhood when I'm running. And it was like freedom because now all of a sudden noise feels like a distraction. Like any music or anything you put in, I'm like, I want to think.
So you listen to podcasts when you run?
I used to.
Oh, you used to. When I run, I don't listen to anything if it's outdoors. I live like taking in like just whatever's going on around me. When I run, I think I get into like this flow state when I start running.
But you were a cross country runner, right?
Yeah, I was a cross country runner through high school.
Yeah, what a great habit for you to have picked up. So I played football, and in football, part of being a football player was that you smoked or you hung out and stuff. It was like
cool
stupid.
Kids.
Yeah, there's nothing smart about that. The cross country team, which was winning state year after year after year where I'm from,
nice.
They weren't doing that. They had a culture of like, hey, focus. This is how you eat better. This is how you run. What a mistake it was for me to have been a football player and not a cross country runner.
There's a really good documentary about like the most successful high school cross country team of all time. I believe it's called The Long Green Line.
Okay.
And that really dives into kind of their lifestyle, and some of these kids, man, are nuts. They're running 3.1 miles in 15 minutes and
oh my God.
I had a pretty good time, but it wasn't like that. I mean, I was doing 3.1 miles in maybe like 18 or high 18 minutes. But
for a high school kid, that's pretty incredible.
But man, these kids are in the 15s and
that's really crazy.
5-minute mile paces for 3 miles. And
do you run now?
Not as much as I should probably, but I've kind of had this lingering knee thing I'm working through. It's a lot better now. I think it's just like a one-off thing. I don't think it's gonna.
My immediate reaction when you said that was you should talk to my wife. But you know what? I am really pissed off about something to do with physical therapy that you probably know nothing about, and people should know about this. In the state of Missouri, if you have an injury, your knee hurts, you were running, you started being like, hey, this hurts. You have to first go to a doctor to get a prescription to be able to go see a physical therapist, despite the fact that the physical therapist has the same amount of education as the doctor, and way more on the musculoskeletal system, right?
Right.
So you could be an anesthesiologist, hear somebody say, hey, I have knee pain, and they could write you a script to go to a physical therapist, but you can't just decide to go do it yourself.
Okay, so let me ask this, if you know. Typically, right, whenever someone makes a rule or a law like that, it's solving a problem. Like, what problem are they solving when they made that? Whenever someone drafted that and was like, no, you need to get a doctor's note to go see a physical therapist, why?
So I think there's two parts of it. This was the case in a lot of states, and most states have gotten rid of it. And I think it was because when physical therapy first started as a field, it really was just therapeutic. It was a doctor saying like their knee needs to, move better. So make sure you give them some mobility exercises and some other things. And that was as close as they knew. Right. But now the field is so much more advanced than that, because since I had the woman that was one of the, godmothers of that field on, since they discovered like, look, it's not just doing exercises. You need to look at how the whole body is moving to be able to figure out how this is happening, why you're having this impingement, why you're having this pain. And so they developed it into a deep, deep field, and they still call it physical therapy, but it's not really in the old-fashioned way of doing this. Mm-hmm. So I think at the time when they set it up, they were saying it, well, this is just this is how serious what they can do is. You have to have a prescription to get it. And then you get to a certain point where you're like, we don't need this anymore. We've got this.
Yeah.
If you're a physical therapist now in today's modern age, you can handle this. You're not going to do any harm.
Yeah.
And they just never got rid of it. But there are senators in the state of Missouri that have actively worked against being able to directly access a physical therapist. That makes me mad because I see guys down at the gym. And I'm like, hey, I know you're having problems with that. You're telling me we should like line you up to go see my wife. But I know that in order to do it, they got to go to the doctor and then go do this. And like,
that's a hassle. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I am glad that there's experts like that in this world, though, like physical therapists. So whenever I was running, I started getting these back pains. And so you're getting back pains. What do you think? Like, oh, maybe I need to stretch my back more. Right. That was my first thought. I looked at back stretches and it wasn't helping. And then I knew a physical therapist and I was talking to them. And they said, oh, it's because your hamstrings are tight. I'm like, yeah, that was my first guess. My legs are tight, so my back's going to hurt. But no, it's because my hamstrings were tight.
And of course, you're a tall guy, right?
Yeah.
You're sitting most of the day with your knees are above your hips. And so your hamstrings aren't getting the proper... I totally get it, man.
Yeah, my hamstrings were super tight. And I started stretching those and my back pain went away.
Yeah, I'm in with you on the stretching thing this year. So I'm out of jiu-jitsu for the next few days because I started having hip problems.
Yeah.
And I got to get that squared away. But I was able to talk with my wife and figure out what the problem was. And like it's unfortunate that people can't just go directly to a physical therapist.
That is unfortunate. Yeah. Yeah.
We should do something about it. Is what I think.
We should.
Yeah.
Start a riot.
Yeah. So speaking of riots, what do you hear about what's going on in Iran?
It's pretty nuts. I can't say I've done a deep dive on it, but I've been enjoying the Twitter memes.
Yeah, it's interesting how dark that got so quickly.
Yeah, everyone thinks they're getting ready for the draft already.
You think so?
No, but I think Twitter thinks that.
It was interesting to me how much I saw of people making light of that, and I don't care. So do whatever you want. But it was just that's not always happened. Right, we didn't used to, hey, we're maybe going into a really serious altercation. Mm-hmm. Now let's everybody make jokes. And maybe they did, and I just wasn't in that club. Yeah. But I am now, and I know they're sending funny things around.
They are. Yeah, that's crazy. I think it's just a thing to make light of things now, especially with the internet. I think people find certain comfort in it.
The guy, Dwayne Faber, the dairy farmer that was on the podcast, he had a hilarious tweet about if you were in Iraq, every time you saw the sun go behind the clouds, like you'd duck because it'd be so I was like, wow.
Whoa. Yeah, I've seen a few like that. I tweeted one today that was it was like when you find out that you can't be drafted if you have a felony. And then it was Freddie Mercury singing Mama just killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled the trigger.
Whoa.
So it's like a joke about like willing to get a felony to get out of the draft.
Oh man. That is
I don't actually believe that. I'm just here for the memes, but
I mean good funny. Memes are good memes. And you know what? You should be able to share memes of things you like completely disagree with, right? Like that's how you get tumult. That's how you get change. Where do you find your memes? Is that something you're willing to give away, or is that a secret that most people hold?
I get my memes illegally, so I can't really talk about that. No, I get Reddit. It's probably the biggest one. Reddit or Twitter.
Okay.
Probably good places for memes.
And you specifically go. I mean, you. Yeah. So I'm in a chat group with you, and you're like, it's like you got a deck of cards, and you're just waiting for the time to throw that one in, and then that one. I
absolutely have a deck of cards.
And so, have you always been a jokester? You're kind of a jokester, trickster.
Maybe a little bit. I think I kind of get that from my brother. My little brother. He's just an hilarious person. So. I think it kind of rubbed off on me a little bit. He loves making fun of people and lightheartedly, and like his friends and me and parents and stuff. And he's always kind of found his way through humor, and he's just a humorous guy. So I think it kind of rubbed off on me. Just growing up with him all the time, he's one of the 5 people I spent the most time with. So I think I became kind of a jokester through him in a way. But I'm a little more subtle than he is, or a little calmer about it. But
is he a high energy kind of guy?
He can be, for sure. He definitely can be. Now he's in the Navy, and I know he's just being rowdy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's probably going through a little party thing, but he might need it.
Any concern because you have a brother in the military with Iran? I mean, like you're saying, we're making jokes, but like there'll be real soldiers going into a real place.
I mean, it's there. I don't think it's right now. It hasn't become real yet to me, but it's definitely there. He would be one on a ship too. He's quartermaster, which apparently in all the other branches of the military means you gather supplies, but in the Navy it means you navigate. So he's a ship navigator, and he's already navigated ships from Maine to Jacksonville, Florida, and kind of all around. So
wow.
I think it's possible that if there's action for the Navy, he might see it. But
I mean, the Navy is used in war a lot more than people realize because you take those ships and you put them offshore. And most of the time in the U.S. Navy, you can set up our ships so that we're far enough away that somebody striking us would be pretty difficult. But you're still there, And in Iran, you're talking about some pretty tight. There's some pretty tight areas where you could come in conflict next to ships coming, where somebody decides we're going to block off the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to make it so nobody can move through here, and then you've got to decide: are we going to go pick a fight with them? And then if their ship shoots at us, do we shoot back at them? Like these questions are being asked right now.
Yes, 100%. and I need to look more into it. I don't think I'm.
So I did the opposite, right? When I was your age, I looked into all this stuff. I was watching it. I was reading. I mean, I read the New York Times. I had a subscription. I was pretty poor for most of my life.
Cool.
I had a subscription to the Sunday New York Times, basically for 5 years.
Right.
And I would read it cover to cover. I was like, all right, I want to know what's going on in the world. And now I look back and I realize that was all noise. Just because it had the sheen of being in the news, did I have like a sensation that I knew what was going on? But really, they're just like, think of the medieval times when there's guys with marionettes being like telling you a story, and all the people are watching is this box, and we look at them and be like, how could they watch that and think that's so funny or interesting or worth watching? That's what our news media is now. They're just putting on a show.
Oh yeah, I've never liked the news. I don't know. I'm not super political or anything, and that's what 9 out of 10 of it is. And I'm not all like super like fake news, but I don't believe some of it sometimes, and I'm just ignoring it, I think, and maybe that's not a good response, but I think
it is, man. I think I wasted, a lot of hours being up on what this guy said or that guy said. Like, it's a soap opera, and it's not even altogether different than watching the WWF, right? And the people that are like die hard, they know what is going on and who those bad senators are on the other side. Like, can't you see your own people, the people that you're on the side of, they are showing you things to get you to have an emotional reaction, so that you will go give them the power for them to do what they want to do. And they aren't on your side. You got to have some system, but to be so vitriolic and hateful and angry on either side, you're lost.
What they're doing now, and it's not the effect they intended, but it's making everyone desensitized to it. Like every article is the most extreme title. It's usually not a truthful headline. The headline is blood and guts and war and money and like what catches people's eyes. And instead of making people like, oh my God, now I think people are becoming desensitized and don't care. It's like, what's it take to shock people now? I think it's a lot more. Now there's very offended people out there, but I mean, in general, I think it's...
Well, and I think about how easy it is to read the articles I find when I'm just like thumbing through social media, because everybody is like, I want to optimize it for this to be the easiest thing for somebody to read so that they stay engaged with it and they scroll down. There are exceptions. I started, my buddy Keaton Kruger told me about this Wait But Why. Have you heard of this guy?
Have not.
And I've only just begun, but he has a very interesting way of making comparisons that are simple so that you can understand how the world works. Like, we're as close now to the Civil War as some other experiences. I can't even remember any of them. They were good though.
Yeah.
But most of the things that you read on the internet are easy and simple and they're fluff. They're candy. They're junk food.
Right.
Which 100%. Is why I love that book club, because I started realizing, like, if I can shut down the phone for 30 minutes, the value I'm going to derive out of reading this book for 30 minutes, I know is high. How high? I don't know, but I know it's high because the book's been around for a long time.
Yes.
And people told me it was their favorite book they ever read, versus this, where I'm just pulling the roulette wheel saying, I hope somebody on Twitter shares something with me that I think is interesting. But most of the time I'm just sitting there cheering for my tribe and cheering against the other tribes.
Yeah. Well, I think I look at reading as like I said, I've been getting into investments and stuff more, right? I've been kind of looking into reading as more like a dividend, right? Like it just pays off the more you do it, the more you absorb. Maybe you're not going to read a book and absorb 100% of everything you see, right? But you're going to take nuggets. You're going to take little bits and pieces that mean something to you or that relate to your life or that you think you can value from. And I think that just builds on itself the more you read.
I 100% agree with that. And one of the things, so the Twitter feed Visualize Value?
Yes.
So the guy has like black background and white options. White straight lines are all of his options. It's not curves usually. It's very like... and it looks like even slower than 8-bit, not slower, but lower resolution, or however you want to say that. But the cool thing is he puts in like a quote, but then he adds in drawings that make that quote make sense.
And it's very minimal artwork.
Right.
And I think that's something in a way, like it's creativity through limitation. Like he's limiting himself to no color palette. He's limiting himself to straight white lines.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
It forces him to kind of, in my opinion, I don't know him. I don't know if this is what he's doing or not, but I would think it's forcing him to like, I have to be creative because I have to be able to tell a story through this quote using only straight white lines.
And the quotes are usually like 7 or 8 words at the most.
Yeah. I know he made one for Rob Long, didn't he? Your buddy?
Yeah. So the Rob Long one was, attention is your budget to change the world. Spend it wisely.
I love that.
And it, like, the way that he does the drawing, I'll throw it up here. It's like a circle with a bunch of circles in between, and you can see that's like the distracted world. Mm-hmm. And then you have over here one just giant circle.
Yeah.
And the way that he does the writing makes it so you see how the picture represents the words. And it's so deep because it's so crystal clear. It's so simple.
Yes.
And he does all of the work to distill the value. And that's the difference between people on Twitter and books is the same thing. It's that the author, in order to get that book published and then to have it live through all these years, they didn't have fluff. Every sentence is packing meaning. There's not waste in there. There's a lot of waste over here. And that visualized value is probably, I don't know how you could get better than that at being simple. Like, I think it's actually archetypal. I think it's all the way down at the core. Yeah,
it's just amazing. I really do enjoy looking at him. I've retweeted him a bunch, I think, and I try not to be too annoying with the retweets. I don't want to my page look like his page, but
what is your philosophy on how you use Twitter?
I just want, so that's a really good question. I like looking at the jokes, and I like following MMA news and sports news and things like that. I kind of just use it to consume content mostly for now. I would like to have my page, especially if I end up doing something where I'm running a business or something, have my page be something that's fun to follow, like Strange Donuts. If you ever look at his Twitter, Jason Bachman.
Oh yeah,
I know he's been on here a couple of times. His Twitter to me is the funniest thing on earth. Some of his tweets are so dumb and creative at the same time. It's impressive how funny he is.
I mean, and I think it's because he's so genuine. Like the other day, he had some dust up. Somebody was I don't know writing bad reviews on his page or something, but he found out that the person was doing it maliciously or something like that. Yeah. I don't really understand. But he comes on and he does a 30-second video. He's cut out all the nonsense and he explains what's going on, and then he says, "I don't have any hard feelings for you. I know what it's like to be under the gun. I feel you. I know what it's like to be afraid. I got nothing but love for you. I want nothing but success for you." So, I watched that and I was like, I'm a better man for having seen that.
Yes, 100%. You were asking me earlier about like aspirations and stuff. I want to be Bachman when I'm older, I think that's what I want to be.
I think that you have to be prepared to go to hell for that.
Yeah, no.
I think he earned every bit of his knowledge of how to handle that situation.
Yes.
Because he was in hell. Uh-huh. And that brings up actually a good question. Like, the only way you get better at things is if you're willing to suffer in some way. Now, you can turn that suffering into meaning and you don't have to hate it like we talked about with running.
Yeah.
But how much are you willing to suffer for the dream that you have? And I think maybe that's where you and I were probably similar, in that you aren't really willing to announce like, "Hey, I want to go be an accountant and own my own accounting firm." And I was the same way. Yeah. I think it's because of that.
I have a feeling that when I know, I'll know. Like when I know that this is what I want to be doing, I will be willing to
go through that suffering.
Yes, but I think I'm maybe being a little conservative in my approach.
I think that's a good idea. There's this guy named Kenneth Stanley who Rob and I used to read way before we ever met you. He talks about this concept that you can't really know where you're going. Innovation happens by just taking the next step. You look around at what your options are and then you take the next step instead of saying, "This is how I'm going to get from point A to point B," because you don't always know what point B is. So you keep taking that next step. But I think when you know where you're going, you have a willingness to take larger risks, which means you increase your level of your willingness to suffer for things in case they don't work out or as they do work out.
Right. And it's like you've told me before about about chaos, right? That's where all new things come from. And it's just your willingness to step away or like to go outside your comfort zone and bring something back into your comfort zone which expands your comfort zone, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I heard a really interesting quote from Rob. Actually, was the one telling me, Rob Long, Plantimals on Twitter. He was telling us about the book. It was something about the revolutions in science or how science evolves, and he basically said, the quote was essentially, knowledge doesn't come from chaos; it comes from mistakes. And I, at first, was like, I've been saying this other thing. How do I feel about that? And that's actually true, though. It's like a scientist like Doug Sammons or Fred Perlak goes into the chaos and says, we're going to look at these bacteria. We're going to grab this up and we're going to go over here and we're going to see what we can do with it. And it's not that they guess correctly. It's that they run experiments to find what did or didn't work, and then they follow down that path.
Yeah.
So it's applying order to chaos.
Right.
And it's a give and take thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's right. Knowledge comes from mistakes.
Yeah, and look at jiu-jitsu, like learning, you make a bunch of mistakes, and that's when you learn the most. Is like you might be doing this thing where you keep your elbow out, and that's a mistake, but someone points it out to you and then tries to break your arm, you're not making that mistake again.
Oh, that's so I think that is one of Steve, one of our coaches, our Wednesday night coach. I think that is one of his excellent strategies, is that we do so much live rolling, and when he sees you making a mistake, he'll tell you about it.
Yes.
But then he gets in and rolls with you, and you're going as hard as you can, and he is not going as hard as he can, but he exploits the thing that he told you to fix. He gets you into the situation, and then he exploits it, and you'd never forget.
No,
Because it hurts so bad.
What's going to make you learn more than having the threat of going unconscious or having your arm broken?
Right.
Yeah, nothing.
So Steve and Keith are our two primary coaches outside of coach,
Right.
But we don't see coach all the time. He's got a lot of students. So we get Keith and Steve. Steve, I feel like, is the rough and tumble you're going to learn through the hard way, the fighting way. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Keith, who is like really technically excellent.
Yes.
And is focused on improving his technique. So I feel like a lot of times we work on things that he's like, I need to learn this better. And so the way that I'm going to learn it is by teaching you guys, and I'll figure things out. Mm-hmm. And we get done with class with him and I'm like, I know a new thing.
Yes.
You get done with Steve's class and you're like, dead tired,
yep.
But you're like, I'll never do that, or that again.
Yes.
Right? Or oh, that kind of worked.
And I think having the balance between the two coaches is going to make me a lot better.
Right.
Yeah. I take what I learned in Keith's class and I try to do it 100 times in rolling at Steve's class. Like,
it's a good system.
Yeah.
It's a good system. And the best thing about it is the guys that show up.
Oh, man.
I mean, like, we don't need to go into different things, but that's the cool thing about having a community.
Yes.
Because, and Ann and I were talking about this the other day. You don't know how much your life is static until you get into a community and you start seeing other people in their day-to-day lives, and you start seeing like, oh, they were trying to get through college, or, oh, they had that semester, or, oh, they had, people that you don't know in another context, but then you start to get to know them and you start to know about how they're progressing along the path, right?
Yes.
In their life outside of where you're doing this thing. Mm-hmm. And then you have a bond with them because you want to see them succeed because they're working out and rolling as hard as they can with you. Or my wife does synchronized swimming, so you don't even have to be fighting. You can be dancing in the water together. But when you have that, the richness that it brings to your life is so difficult to try and describe, but it's that you have a wider spectrum of how you see the world going on right now. And that's one of the things I love about our crew at jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
And anytime somebody new comes in, you're like, yeah, all right, what are you going to bring? Come on, come on in.
Yeah, I think jiu-jitsu is something that's done for me is made me not as scared of failure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm trying to balance those two. Like, I just explained how failing makes you learn, but it sucks and it hurts. But I'm also, even though it hurts every time, I'm not scared of it. It's because I know in the long term it's making me better.
Yeah, I think over the last year, I found out while I was running that most of the barriers that I put on myself are like the fear ones are like, oh no, what might happen? And once you start getting past that, oh no, what might happen? Like, no, I'm controlled. I'm trying this new thing, but I'm going to do it within these parameters. Mm-hmm. I can go a little further. When you learn that you can go a little further, it becomes addictive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think right now I'm kind of chasing this like dragon of trying to tap upper belts. It's just kind of like this. I just been trying. I used to go against upper belts, blue and up, because I'm a white belt. Blue and up, I go against them like blue belts. Sometimes I'll be like, I'll get a feel for it, and then I usually get beat, right? And then purple belts and up, it's just fighting a magician.
So speaking of the different belts, you had a really good point the other day where I was saying, I think we were hanging out,
Yeah.
and I was like, I think that using the belt system to describe levels of expertise is really helpful out in the world. And you made a really good point, and you were like, it is, because it shows there are levels of expertise, but what you don't know is the distance that it takes to go from getting your white belt to getting your blue belt. Walking in the door when you're handed your white belt to your blue belt. You're right. Without that perspective, you don't know that having a color belt means you're like legit good. You actually know what you're doing.
I think if you took someone that doesn't understand that dynamic, right, and you showed them like explained it to them that these are the expert levels, and you had them like, how good do you think a purple belt is? They would probably be like, he's okay, right? Just looking at it on that scale, it's like, oh, he's okay. He's 3 out of 5. He's
Right.
But in reality, he's a magician. He's a wizard.
That's right.
And he's just maybe a little too inexperienced to get to that mastery yet.
Or he's just begun, or he's like working on the honing of the skill. That's right. But I do think in every single field that you have, there is that thing. And it's probably that same Pareto distribution of how many people quit before they get to that blue belt level. And it's most everybody, right? Somebody starts as like 80% or maybe 65%. They're going to quit. But the ones that make it here, then that is because it's so hard to get there.
Yes. Yeah, I think people think that it's going to be easy, or they kind of, jiu-jitsu crushes your ego, and if you can't handle that, you're not going to last.
I think that's what I wanted in a job.
Really?
I wanted to be able to be like, okay, I have a skill that's good enough for me to be able to do it. But I want it to be a skill that the more that I do it, the better that I could get. And I see how powerful that could be to have a mastery of something.
Absolutely.
And that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm doing with my work, right? Like now I'm consulting and I do speaking. And the speaking, I can work on both. I can hone a lot of them. But with the speaking, I watch people that are way, way better than me. I film myself and say, what could I have done to have said that better? Why is it that I thought I was going to get a laugh there and I didn't? What stopped me up on the way that I was talking, or how did I stutter? And once you get over the like, oh, I look silly, or oh, I don't like the sound of my voice, and you can probe yourself as hard as you probe your friends, it's awesome.
Oh, it's amazing. It's liberating. It really is. Funny you brought that up. I used to hate my voice. Like middle school, high school, I hated it. I didn't want to be in recordings, and I was in a band. I didn't want to sing anything. I just didn't like it.
And now?
I don't care. It's whatever. I'm stuck with it. It's not that bad.
Now I can paint it in my own mind. I can hear it even when it's when I'm not on, because we'll record this and then I'll go edit them, right? So I'll listen, and I don't generally cut things out, but if some kind of mistake happens or whatever, so I want to listen to the whole thing, and now I've gotten so used to my voice that it is my voice. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's the sound of me.
Yeah. And
that's a it's an important feeling, because once you get past that, you're able to probe yourself a lot more.
Mm-hmm. There's a comedian, and he's I'll remember his name in a little bit, but he was on this show. It's called The Green Room. And it's just a bunch of comedians. Like there's 5 comedians in a room, and they have a podcast, like just like 5 comedians from different backgrounds. There's older guys, younger guys, actor comedians, like Ray Romano is on there a lot, or he was on there once. But he said when I was a kid, I used to worry about my hair a lot, and then I realized that was a dead end. It's pretty funny. It's humorous, right? Hair dead end, but it's also like you have these things that you don't like, but then you reach a point, it's just like you get over it, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Do you have people around you that are telling you what they think you could do to get better?
A lot of that in jiu-jitsu, and I think you, Chris Oliver, is doing that.
He's been on the podcast.
Yeah, Chris Oliver's doing that for me. We go get lunch weekly now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he's been kind of I'm looking at him like a mentor. Definitely, I think he's a great guy to learn from.
I mean, he just has so much wisdom. When you hear Chris talk about something, I find myself being like, everybody shut up. Like he's going to tell us something really important about how to think about solving this problem. Yeah. And he's just dead on when he's talking.
What I like about Chris too is he picks his fights a little bit. He sits and he waits, and then when he talks it means something.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, that's cool.
Yeah. I've been getting lunch with Chris weekly, hanging out with you guys. I think is doing that for me. Outside of that, not that much. I mean, there are.
I gotta say, so you hang out with the group, like we hang out with. You know, we don't have to talk about it, but like there's a wide range of ages.
Yes.
But you are the first time we've brought in somebody that's remarkably younger, and as soon as you started hanging out with us, I was like, this is absolutely the right decision because you're bringing parts of culture that we've left behind. We're not involved in any way. And it really helps the group be like, oh, there's this other way of looking and thinking about things. And it's not the fact that you're young. It's the fact that you are a part of that wave of culture that's happening right now. Right.
And then also, it helps me out a bunch too, right? Because I'm with people that are older, been where I'm at. Like, I think I have something to offer, and I think I can be a successful person later in my life, right? But hanging out with you guys, I'm kind of figuring out what it takes. I'm learning what works and what doesn't, just being there, right? I'm kind of trying to be a sponge a little bit too.
I had a little tweet thread because some guys were talking about wanting to get groups of guys together and, you know, how do you think about this? And I was trying to put together my thoughts on, hey, you want to pick a place where you know where everybody's going to meet regularly. I don't think it should bounce around because then you've got to coordinate and whose turn is it and whatever. You just pick a place and you say, this is where we meet. Now, sometimes they're not necessarily going to work. You can meet another place, but that's the standard. Now people know, hey, if it's a little later than what we thought we were going to start, that's okay. I can still swing by. They'll be there.
Yeah.
Then you got to have the group have like something that they enjoy doing together.
Okay.
Like it doesn't have to be like you could be drinking or smoking or whatever you wanted, but you could also be working on cars, or you could be, you know, trying some hobby like you were talking about, like, but you want to make it so that everybody is excited to be there because there's something going on. Right. And then you've got to make sure that everybody is getting a chance to talk about what's going on in their lives at some point, right?
Yes,
like that's the point, because that's what you're doing is you're sharing the wisdom of what's gone on so far. And invariably somebody will be like, oh, I had that problem and this is what happened to me. And it's a fun back and forth. And if you can set those parameters up, I don't care who you are, you can get a group of guys together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do appreciate being a part of this group. I think it's a very productive group and something that I'm learning a lot from.
I think that people should spend more time just sitting and talking with other groups of driven people. Yeah. And if you don't have it, get out there and find it. And you can find it on Twitter. I found a lot of people that I'm connected with really deeply on Twitter, and you can start building it that way. But you got to find a community, and it should be live. Yeah.
I think there's two sides to that coin. I think one, you should be hanging out with more people and having conversations with people, and you're learning a lot from that. I'm learning a lot from that, and it's great. Also, you should be having these conversations with yourself too. I think spending time by yourself is really good, and journaling has been helping me a lot.
How long have you been journaling?
I've been journaling not that long. So I started maybe a couple months ago, and then it fizzled out. I wasn't able to do it regularly. I didn't have a system. And then I was like, I want to do this. This is something I don't want to give up on yet. I found this journal online that's more guided. It gives you a format. Like, it tells you what to write, where to write it. But how you write it's up to you, obviously, right? Like, it just tells you date and time up here, when did you go to bed.
Yeah, I had made a commitment when I was trying to encourage people to do their journaling to give them prompts, because my wife was like, I sit down and write and I don't know what I should write down. Yeah. And it's been hard for me to do because I don't think of it that way. I sit down and I have such a tight structure on what I write about. Yeah. That if I tried to tell somebody else, and I try to be like, oh, I do my weight and I do my how far I exercised and my name, and then I start here. but like it wouldn't make sense. It's written for the path down my brain, right? Not down somebody else's. So I completely appreciate the value of having a template.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's one that, like, to me, it would be like somebody giving me an assignment and I'd be like, get out of here. I don't need your help here to write this down.
You didn't need help with that. I definitely needed help with that. My old journals were just scatterbrained, right? Like sometimes I'd write the date, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes it'd be 3 paragraphs, sometimes it'd be 2 sentences. I didn't have anything like
oh yeah, my world is littered with journals that have the first 5 pages written in them, right?
Yeah.
But I now I have ones that I can fill cover to cover, and it's just, and then it's like, oh, I have this manual, like this is the manual that made me me, and I just set it down over here.
I got my girlfriend into journaling too, and she's been getting a lot of value out of it as well.
What would you say she gets value out of it? Like, in what way?
I think one thing she likes is she said sometimes she's working a lot, and sometimes she has days where it just kind of like blends. Like Wednesday and Thursday are the same day, and she can go back and be like, oh, I did this that day, that's actually really cool. Or
that's a really good point.
So I think she looks at it as almost like a history book into her own life already, and it hasn't been that long that she's been doing it. But also I think for journaling I needed that framework, right? Like that's something I needed. I would have lost it a long time ago if I didn't pick up a guided journal, I think.
So what are you picking out from your guided journal? What's coming out for you?
So I think one thing that's pretty cool is it has me list 3 things I'm grateful for that day and kind of reflect on things that I'm grateful for. I think gratitude is a really important...
Oh yeah. You have to be humble in order to be grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, he pushes gratitude, he pushes empathy and self-awareness. And I don't watch him that much, honestly, but those are 3 things I totally agree with. I pride myself a little bit on self-awareness, and I definitely need to work on being more empathetic towards people, or having like I don't know.
I worry about the word empathy.
Why?
Because I think that we pushed that idea into our culture that that being empathetic, that understanding where somebody was coming from, is a core like way to be good or nice, but sometimes empathy, and I know it's not sympathy, but sometimes understanding where somebody's coming from clouds the objective reality of where they are. And I think that sometimes if you're like so empathetic that you're like, I really understand that AJ's working a lot of hours and he's doing this and he's doing that, so of course he's let his weight go, wild. I think that it keeps people from being able to say, like, I'm going to tell you something that I know you would want me to tell you if you knew that I knew it.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a time and place. There's definitely a line, right? Like, if I'm harming myself if I'm like working all this time and doing all this stuff and I'm just gorging myself with cheeseburgers, that's something that's harmful to me, and I definitely would want it pointed out, because maybe I'm not realizing I'm as bad as
I think that that's been a good thing for me out of the community that I have, both our group, but definitely with my wife, was opening, and this is probably from jiu-jitsu too, right? Like, what is it that I am willing to let someone correct me on?
Yeah.
Because it's humbling to be corrected.
Yeah. I think you're a lot more empathetic than you give yourself credit. A little bit.
Huh.
Like, for example, you went to that ag road show in Canada, right?
Right.
And you kind of talked about if you're not looking at people that oppose you, and then you're not getting things that can like rattle your foundation.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's fair.
And that's definitely a very empathetic place you're coming from when you say that.
Yeah, I that's interesting, because it puts it in a different light. I'm always saying that because I'm like, you really could fall into a bear trap. You think you know what they're saying. You go to make a commentary to somebody thinking that they agree with you and that this is your caricature of them.
Yeah.
And you actually may run into a bandsaw, because that person may really know what they're talking about, and you're about to look really, really foolish. And they're going to love doing it. And so I try and prepare people. It's just like jiu-jitsu. I try and prepare people for, you've got to be looking at what they're saying and not through the eyes of another person. Because if you do it through the eyes of the other person, they may have a vested interest in changing your view on who that person is. So I don't I appreciate you thinking it's from a place of empathy, but I think it's more of a place for self-defense.
I can respect that. I could definitely see that too. I think I viewed it as like, because you were talking about like you were talking with Dwayne, I believe, and you were talking about fake meat, like the Beyond Burgers,
right?
Things like that. And he was kind of saying, you know, why does there need to be a substitute for beef? We already have beef. It's great, all this stuff. And then you were kind of saying, you know, it was with Jared McDaniel. Jared McDaniel, that's right. And you kind of said, you know, that's narrow-minded to think like that, right? Like, and you don't think there's like vegan activisms that are just here because they support animals and they believe.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, fair enough. I mean, one of the things that I have found as I got older that I definitely didn't have in my 20s was I didn't understand that you could have a different worldview than me. Yeah. And you could be right, and so could I.
Yes.
And that did not conflict with my moral principle that there was a black and white, right and wrong. So you're in your 20s.
Yes.
And you got a job and you're fit and you're young. What do you do on Friday and Saturday night?
I like to spend time with my girlfriend, and we usually try to find something to do, some event. Sometimes it's a local concert. I like to support local music when I can. I haven't that much.
What kind of music? I wouldn't even know where to go if it was like, let's go see some local music. I would have no idea where to go.
St. Louis has some great places. And it also depends what you're into. I like punk rock or like high energy.
So your girlfriend's going to punk concerts with you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she likes it too.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Definitely want to start going to more. I think it's something that I can feel like a direct value is given. Like whenever you're in the crowd at these local shows, there's not a lot of people a lot of times, you know, and it means something to the bands if you talk to them and say, hey, I enjoyed that. And you can...
I guess I never thought about that.
Yeah, like local bands do a lot and they don't get the support.
Yeah, I think about being a speaker and having somebody come up to you and be like, hey, that really meant a lot to me. I loved what you had to say. But of course it would be, I look at people in a band, like you sent photos and I saw you being a drummer in the back of a stage with a huge crowd of people gathered around you. And I was like, I have never had that sensation. I have never had the feeling of like a room of people cheering to have you keep going and to keep playing your music. That's awesome, man.
I mean, that's what I think you do when you speak, right? Like I see you speak in front of crowds.
Yeah, but I think you should just take this compliment because it is like, and really think about the fact that there are a lot of people that dreamed of being a rock star and you've at least tasted it. And maybe you don't want to go to be the black belt that you'd have to be to do it. But you at least got to smell the air of the mountain up there.
This reminds me of something I want to talk about real quick. I'm petitioning to have an As the Crow Flies episode about how to take a compliment. So this is my petition. I'm sliding it forward on your desk. All right.
That's a good one, man. That's because it definitely takes tact, and I see a lot of people. I'll need to think about how I learned this because I know that somebody taught me this. This was not. But there's a lot of tact that goes into it because you need to understand that a person can give you a compliment for several different reasons, but you have to understand, you know, that a lot of times if somebody gives you a compliment that you really care about, it was scary to them. Yeah. And most people don't realize that sometimes the compliment that meant the most to them was the hardest one to give. And so you want to make sure that you recognize that with people and you reward them for making observations about you or about another person that by sharing it, you made them better, right? That's why I even take my criticisms after the fact to be compliments.
Yeah, they are.
Because if somebody didn't care, they just leave.
Yeah, criticisms are without a doubt compliments. It's complimenting something else, though. It's complimenting that they care. It's complimenting that you're someone worth caring about. Right? Like, I care enough to tell you. If I didn't care, I wouldn't point it out to you. It doesn't matter to me, right? Whether you get better at this or not. But if I care about you, it's like, hey, I think if you did this instead of doing this, you'd be way better off. You know,
I've been on stage during a Q&A where somebody stands up and makes a criticism. Yeah. And that is I could feel like the adrenaline making my fingers tingly and tasting a metal taste in my mouth, right? Like I'd been hit in the face or something. And eventually that happens enough when somebody's doing that, you start to realize like that person may be pointing this at you, but they don't actually care about you.
Right.
They're afraid of something, and they're pointing out that what you told them did not allay their fears or their what they're angry about. And so you got to change that. That is them giving you very direct, very clear feedback that you failed. You did not achieve what you came to, because I was going and talking with people like, you don't need to be afraid of genetic engineering. You don't need to be afraid of pesticides. You can ask me any question you want. And sometimes people got really like dig on me.
Yeah.
But once you let go of that being about you, you can handle it.
It's different when it's a divisive subject too, right?
Right.
Like that you're talking about, there's one side and the other. And you're trying to, maybe like you're on this side and you're trying to talk to people on this side, and I could see that getting a little aggressive in the criticism department, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure people have gotten aggressive, or like maybe you got a little scared or something, right? Like people are going, I don't know.
Well, so what can happen is that somebody can come to a microphone and they're working up the courage to ask you something, and they're nervous because they aren't public speakers. They don't do this all the time. And so then they have emotion because it's something that they're doing. They believe that they are standing up for something. So they go up to that microphone and their voice is shaking, and they may be saying things to you that you interpret as like, you're crazy that you think that, and that you would even ask that question of me. You must be reading some way conspiratorial sites. There are people, but people don't choose to be afraid. They don't want to be afraid. Afraid is an unstable position. Yeah. What they want is to know, how can I trust what's going on here? That I can be confident that I'm not doing something that's going to harm me, or that somebody's not going to take advantage of me. And you got to recognize that that's what drives somebody to come up and pick up a microphone and say something to the man that just stood on a box and told them.
It takes confidence.
Yeah. And so once I began to realize that's how people feel, even if what they do is they walk up there and they're angry. So they don't have the shaky, they have the, I'm going to yell into this microphone. It's all coming from a place of fear. Yeah, sure. And that's a great thing to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think the anger approach is compensating, or like covering up the fact that they're scared?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And most of the time, if somebody's angry, one of the biggest things is that they interpret that you are not going to pay attention to them. Because if you were going to pay attention to them, they wouldn't need to raise their voice. No. They wouldn't need to signal to you that they are, showing aggression. And so that's why that mirroring thing, like, that is no joke. Have you heard me talk about mirroring before?
Maybe a little, but
so somebody tells you something, and instead of you responding to it, so this person's angry, they make an accusation at you. Instead of you responding to the accusation, you just repeat back for them exactly what you heard them say. So, you think that this guy, what I'm hearing you say is, you think Monsanto is poisoning the soil and the air, and that everything is going to be destroyed if you don't stop them. Is that correct? Yeah. And then the guy will say yes. And then you say, is there more? And then I do it again. So I repeat back for him exactly what I heard him say. Now, the second time, you watch anger dissipate.
Because you're trying to understand his perspective, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And by understanding the way these emotions work, this is probably empathy, actually.
It is.
It is. But when you can understand that, then you can calibrate yourself to have that flow state with another person, where even if they're too hyped up, you can control.
I was 50-50 on if I was going to call you out on that or not. Call that empathy. I was like, should I or should I not?
You're right. And that's one of the things that you get with age, is you start understanding that shit happens to people.
It does.
Right? 100%. You think like, how could you be like that? And you're like, well, shit happens, man. Bad things happen to people's lives.
Let me ask you this real quick. You've talked to all these people. I'm sure you've changed some minds on some subjects, right? Right? Like,
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Do you find the angry ones, like, there's no changing? There's no, like, they're just stuck in their way? Like, they're not going to believe your side?
The angry ones tend to be people that are, strong opinions are often loosely held, right? You can't hold on to them. Sometimes they're not, but it's the people that come that are sad. Those are the ones that you have like real trouble with. So I will occasionally have somebody that would come and say, like, one time a woman at an Iowa State University talk came and said, my child has autism, and these people say that it's your company's fault, that what your GMOs and your glyphosate did this to him.
Sure.
And what do you have to say for yourself? Right? Like, there's very little energy that's positive there. She's come in with a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pop back and you're defensive or you're strong, like, that's not right. But if you let her continue to believe that's true, she's going down a wrong path.
Right.
And so you've got to, like, that is the level of connection with other people that I only got because I've been around the block and I've had shit happen to me and I've made mistakes. And, you know, that's when you start to say, I know how to relate to people because I know what I would have wanted them to do to me.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I'm sure that's something that's hard to hear too. Like, that's even if you have statistical data showing that this didn't happen, like glyphosate doesn't cause autism, right? But you're still hearing her say that. You're like, I'm sure that's a hard argument to approach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And really, you think about anything that you represent. If somebody came and said that thing is harming me, any human being wants to, like, because it's for your own self-preservation. You're like, okay, I want to know, what is that? Am I doing something wrong?
Yeah.
And the more anger they bring with you, the more you're able to push back on that level of emotion. But if the emotion is just a tiny blip and it's way understated, it's much harder to to engage in with flow in that circumstance where you're just kind of taking their energy and using it in the way that helps get the thing resolved. They don't have much energy. Yeah. What are you going to do? Be sad with them?
Yeah, right. I don't know. Yeah. Wow.
So I will do one on accepting a compliment. I'll think about that because I'm certain that has probably been taught to me. I can remember being rebuked by people for not accepting a compliment that they gave me. I just got to think about it.
I think whenever I receive a compliment, I naturally bring it down a little bit. Like, almost, I don't know, it's like I'm defending, like a defense mechanism or something. Like, you say, oh, you're great at this. I'll be like, yeah, but am I really? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think humility is really good. I think the response about like accepting a compliment is trying to figure out what it was that they wanted to shine a light on in you. And and that's not that you need to deflect that light because the light's already being projected onto you. Right. It's better if you then say how that helped you understand, them in some way. I'll think about this. I need to iron this out, but I accept your request.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
So, man, you're gonna be 30 one day.
One day.
What do you think your life will be like when you begin your 30s?
When I begin my 30s, I think I will be one in a house or late stages of an apartment looking to move into a house. I would like to know what my career path looks like, at least a little bit. Obviously things change. Things happen. Sometimes you end up in a different field, right? But I would like to at least have
You want to own a company? You want to be an employee?
I think I've been thinking about this for a while. I've had experiences somewhat owning a company. I did freelance web development in high school to pay for things. And I understand I think I have a small amount of understanding of what kind of work that takes and what kind of sacrifice that takes to build something like that. And I've been thinking about it. I also think I could be a good employee too. I don't know yet. I see myself right now as an employee, but I think that could change without a doubt.
When I was in my 20s, I didn't think, and I probably couldn't have been as dedicated to like getting my work done.
Okay.
When I wasn't as intrinsically motivated as I am now. And that's what being an entrepreneur requires, because there's nobody to tell you to get to work, right? You just got to do it. And whether results happen or not, it's on you. But there's also luck and chance and all kinds of things. And if I had not had deep intrinsic desire to make that happen, the suffering that you go through, I couldn't have done it. And like that's it's a good thing to be aware of. But the other thing is that when you're an employee of somebody, you're building what they want you to build, and it's not building what you want to build.
Yeah, and that obviously doesn't go to say you can't enjoy being an employee.
Right.
But I do agree with the philosophy that you're putting forward. Yeah, like you're not building your dream, right? And you could be, I guess, like you don't have to identify with your career necessarily, but if you want to be an expert in something, you have to.
Yeah, that's right. And there are some scientists you just can't work unless you're working with a conglomeration of people, and there are experiments that can't be run unless you have millions and millions and millions of dollars to run it. There's nothing wrong with people going to get a job. You just have to make sure that either your identity is not tied in with your career,
correct,
or that whatever career you're in, it allows you to continue to build towards a mastery that you want to have.
Correct. Yes, that's exactly kind of what I was getting at.
And I think if you're not in that position, certainly people have to be like, hey, I've got kids, I've got responsibilities. Then you should be thinking about like, what's my end game here though? Yeah. Is it to wait it out? Is it to have a life I don't really want for the next 10 years? You only have this moment here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the difference between waiting something out and being like, I know I'm going to start this thing and it's going to take me forever to get there.
Yeah.
But I will get there eventually. What's the difference between those two things?
Between waiting something out and I think the difference is waiting and actively waiting.
There you go.
Right? Like waiting, sitting here. If I sat in my room all day and played video games and I said, no, I'll get a job, I'm not going to. I'm going to be sitting in my room playing video games. I'm not going to be applying it out there. But if I'm waiting to maybe find my path, but I'm actively moving in some direction, which for me is learning right now, like I'm actively moving into learning about different things, then I think eventually I will keep pushing forward and then I'll end up on a path.
And where would be your ideal place to work for a job right now?
Right now, that's a good question. I've been applying to more IT related jobs, cybersecurity. I have a cybersecurity degree. I've been applying to some like computer science type jobs or web development jobs. Something maybe in tech. I had a internship at New Balance in here in St. Louis. They have a small building in Kirkwood, and it was a very free place to work. Like they gave you a lot of freedoms. You didn't have to wear a suit and tie. Like my manager wore gym shorts and basketball shoes to work. And
wow.
It was they put a lot of trust in their employees. Like kind of was able to take lunch. If you're gone for 20 minutes or an hour, like just as long as you're back and responsible, they put trust in. I think that's pretty cool. Like having.
Oh yeah. It's a huge change from when you're working in a job where people have got to be told, now is your break. Now you're done with your break. Now you can start working. Now you're done working. Be back at 7.
Yeah. I enjoyed the freedom there.
Yeah. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I guess as we close out, if there's somebody that wanted to get a hold of you because they heard you, they know how hard you're working, they know that you're into cybersecurity and could do all manner of things on computers, how would they go about getting a hold of you? I
would say Talkward on Twitter, TALLKWARD. It's a combination of tall and awkward. And
spell it one more time.
TALLKWARD.
All right.
And I also recently bought the domain name, talkward.com.
That's a good one, man.
Yeah. I just developed a website for it. I'm going to keep adding improvements. Right now it's pretty minimal, but.
Is it up there now? It's live?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I'll go check that out.
Cool.
Well, man, I'm so glad you came on here. You are, if you're one thing, you are the disciplined, driven man that I wish I could have been when I was your age.
Appreciate that.
I am deeply impressed with all that you're doing, and I'm so glad you're in St. Louis. And whatever you decide to do, man.
Oh, for sure.
I'm fully behind you.
One step at a time. I right now I wake up early. I go work out. I eat healthy. I do all these things, but it just was one step at a time. I started waking up at 6, and then 5:30, and then 5:15.
You are on the path, and I'm grateful for knowing you. So, thanks, man. We'll have you back on.
Thank you.
Thanks.